I always love getting educated. And Frances is going to educate me on a new term. I've not heard the term revenge travel, and she's going to help me with this. Frances Stacy is on the line with us as we talk a little bit about summer plans, summer vacations, whatever your plans might be. Our conversation is brought to you by Marcus & Mack, a law firm representing injured people. Frances Stacy is with the Optimal Capital Group. She's the director of strategy there and a market analyst. Frances, good morning.
Good morning. I don't know that I'm an expert on revenge travel, but I'll do my best.
What is it? What is revenge travel?
Well, I think COVID has created so many interesting things in our culture, right? So people were locked down. They couldn't go anywhere. They couldn't see relatives. They had so many restrictions. Obviously we had to wear masks on airplanes for such a long time. And now, we sort of have this wonderful, semblance of normal, And now the prices have gone up so much. I was just looking at some air tickets and, oh boy, sticker shock. Mm-hmm. And now people, I think, are starting to wonder, how long is inflation going to continue? We just got a new inflation print on the television about 15 minutes ago, and it's higher than expected, and it continues to accelerate. And so I think people are starting to think, if this increase in prices, gas, food, interest rates on my credit card is going to continue to move higher, maybe we don't take that summer vacation, which is highly unfortunate.
Mm-hmm. So revenge travel is the idea that you're not going to go, you're going to do something different?
Well, revenge travel, I always thought of it as when nobody could go anywhere during COVID. And so the revenge was, I'm going to travel now that COVID is finished. And now revenge travel may change from your air ticket to the south of France to your local barbecue.
Yeah, or to where you are in Tampa. That's the place to be, man. You've got Stanley Cup playoffs going on there. You've got the Tampa Bay Bucks, and as good as they are, the Tampa Bay Rays stealing our Pittsburgh Pirates players and making them into big superstars. So you got it all down there.
We do, and I think this year probably is Tom Brady's last year, so those tickets are probably going to see some inflation.
Yeah, you bet. Well, Frances, let's talk a little bit about what people can do in the summertime as it is the season. The kids are off of school. Moms and dads might have their traditional family plans for the summer that may be changed a little bit, and inflation is the main reason for it. It really, really is difficult for families to come up with creative ways now to spend a summer, to keep the kids occupied. And maybe that does involve looking closer to home, doesn't it?
I think so. I think what's positive about this, if there's a silver lining, is that people are going to be supporting their local businesses. They're going to be going, maybe going to national parks or doing things like that. Kids are going to be swimming at the local pools, local sports, things that don't involve lots of driving or lots of air travel, because that's probably inflated the most. And the thing about inflation, if you just think about sort of the mechanics of it, it's the amount of money that's in the system juxtaposed to these services or goods. And, if you try to keep that on balance, you sort of have $10 in circulation for 10 loaves of bread. You can kind of predict that each loaf of bread is going to be $1. Mm-hmm. Well, with COVID, we put so much money into the system, and the production of goods and services was halted for a number of months or even a year or more for some. And so what happened was you now have $20 in the system for those 10 loaves of bread, and so those prices have doubled. And the Fed is working very hard to get rid of demand, and part of you canceling your summer plans is demand destruction. And so slowly we're bringing that down, because now you have a situation where the Target stores have lots of inventory and people are purchasing less, and so they're going to have to put that on sale. And so this is happening. Unfortunately, it's not going to fix itself probably this summer in time for your summer vacation, but if you want to push your travel till later in the year, it might be a little less expensive.
Yeah, and of course the gas price is going to be the number one factor in all of it, is it not?
I think so. It's interesting. I rented a car for a couple of weeks, and I rented a hybrid, which is the first time I, had driven one of those, and I was just amazed because I literally drove around for 2 weeks, and my gas cost for the Prius was $30, and I can really see that incentive now to look at going to alternative, forms of energy because of the persistency of the gas prices remaining this high. And I think what scares people the most is they don't really know when there's going to be relief.
Yeah, and you're right. You're absolutely right about that. As the prices keep going higher, the prices then multiply of every good that's in a store. Somebody said everything that you bought in the last 2 weeks or however period of time you want to say got off a truck. It came off a truck, and that truck had to have gas in it. And in order for that truck to go, the driver of that truck had to fill that tank. And filling the tank is more and more expensive. That cost just gets piled onto it, and that's what inflation is all about.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is that, some businesses, we didn't, originally we thought that it was transitory, and I really understand why. We didn't really have a model for COVID. But, as things become less and less transitory, even if prices in the background, some of the food costs, when you look at some of the commodities, live cattle, corn, some of those have backed off. Wheat did back off a little bit, even though we have the geopolitical struggles. Aluminum's gone down in the background. Copper's gone down. And you think to yourself, okay, so these prices might go down, but I think businesses are going to be, really reticent to lower prices, thinking, is this going to stay down? Is this not going to stay down? And, everybody's very cautious, and so that buffer is probably going to stay for a while, which means your prices are going to be higher for a while.
When the pandemic hit, of course, the toilet paper shortage was the first thing that people noticed, or one of the first things people noticed, and how that rippled through the economy. And you thought to yourself, oh, it's just toilet paper. People were panicking, and we understand that, but things will straighten themselves out. But as shortages hit the economy in one sector or another, they do. They ripple down through other aspects of the economy, and all of a sudden there are panics and there are panic buyers. And so it really is incumbent upon families to come up with strategies for whatever their needs might be, is it not?
No, I totally agree with you. I mean, first and foremost, if you have a good income, try to keep your income. Secondly, try to reduce your debt, because those interest rates are going up pretty aggressively, and that means the interest on your credit card is likely going up. And plan ahead. Yeah, I think, I know for me, I have a couple of extra, packages of toilet paper in my closet for certain. I mean, you think it's not you think, toilet paper is not very valuable until you don't have any, and then you realize that changes life quite dramatically. Mm-hmm. I also just think that, whatever you can do to save. I know people's 401ks are getting hit, but the people that are getting hit the worst, of course, don't have 401ks. They are having to not only pay these additional costs with food and gas, but they're putting it on credit cards. So not only are they paying the increase of the cost of the goods themselves, they're paying those higher interest rates, and that's what's really hurting people. So plan ahead, save ahead, find local things to do that are less expensive, and just realize that despite the fact that we may or may not, according to the news this morning, we haven't seen peak inflation yet. Inflation may start to go down because the Fed may be successful in reducing that amount of money, but your prices are going to stay elevated probably for a while.
Frances Stacy is our guest this morning. She's with the Optimal Capital Group. Frances, help me to understand what's going on in the car industry, particularly with the used car market. There are people holding on to their cars longer and longer now because they really don't have an alternative. And the price of used cars, or pre-owned, we like to say, they are just skyrocketing. What's going to break this whole thing, this whole chain that is going on?
Well, the thing is with used cars, they've actually fallen off of their peak price increase, which is one of the earlier signs, which is going to, eventually, these things all have lag effects, affect CPI. But the thing is that people, they want something that's that's scarce, right? So it's supply and demand. People are going to have to hang on to their things longer. The used car prices are backing down. When the Fed starts reducing the money in the system, your 401k goes down, your food costs go up, your gas costs go up. I think people are going to be more interested in electric vehicles, probably, which I think the administration wants that to occur. I think it's a little soon to completely switch over, but because there aren't charging stations everywhere. But those costs are going to slowly come down. But that's the used car scenario is kind of, a quintessential model for inflation. The fact that there was just very little supply, a ton of demand, people were overpaying for them. And now those inventories are backing up because that demand has gone down, and so the prices are going to fall.
When we think of the economy as a whole and inflation's effect upon it, what will be the signs for us that we're not only on the way, but that recovery is just about here?
Well, the recovery in inflation, we are starting to see the early signs. I mean, there are commodities in the background that have peaked. You know, you've got copper, you've got aluminum, you've got live cattle, you've got corn. I mean, some of these are really starting to roll over, and that all contributes to CPI. There is a lag effect, so you may not see that in the overall numbers until the end of this year. So we are starting to see that. The next problem that we can anticipate is that we're going to have a recession, and you're starting to see the early signs of that in the sense that tech is hiring less, and they're getting more conservative about their hiring, which means that's what Jay Powell wants, right? He wants to take this very tight labor market and soften it a little bit so that the wages go down. We saw that this morning in the numbers. And when the wages go down, those costs aren't pushed through to the consumer. And then Target's very interesting because they've got all these inventories. They had the supply chain disruptions and the shortages, but now their inventories are starting to back up because people are buying less, which means to get rid of those inventories, they're going to have to lower prices. So now, just as we're sort of recalibrating our minds around inflation and how it's affecting our individual lives, now we've got to start thinking about recession. So keep your job.
Yeah, you're right. That's a scary word, too. Is it going to be, and everybody uses this benchmark, is it going to be as bad as it was in 2008?
Well, so I don't have a crystal ball, but that is dependent upon if people can continue to service debt. One of the things that you worry about when you start reducing the money supply, which is what the Fed is doing, and the administration is adding less in their fiscal spending, is that you have to have a certain amount of money in the system to be able to service the record amount of debt. And if that drops below and you start to have a credit crisis where there's not enough cash in the system to service all the debt, that's what caused the financial crisis. And so the thing to watch for any of you nerds out there is credit spreads, because credit spreads are an early indication of how people can service credit. And if we have, a massive credit event, meaning there's a massive failure somewhere in the system, there's a contagious effect to that, then we could see another financial crisis. I know the Fed is going to try to prevent that, but the problem is with the speed at which they're changing the amount of money in the system doesn't have a lot of time to recalibrate itself between all the different rate hikes and between all the different balance sheet reductions. So there is actually a higher probability of a policy error because you just can't recalibrate and read the lag effect of all of those incremental changes.
She is Frances Stacy, Optimal Capital Director of Strategy. Thank you so much for coming along, educating us a bit this morning. I appreciate it.
Yes, my pleasure. Happy Friday and have a great weekend.
You too. It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS, 101.1 FM, AM 11, 1.1 FM, AM 11, 1.